Hey guys, welcome back. I'm going to show you this very cool big panel light. This is a fabric light that can be used as its own thing. So just, you attach it with Velcro. It's got Velcro all around and it comes with a bunch of extra Velcro straps and adhesive Velcro and stuff. So you can use it on its own, or you can use it with a light stand with the included holding device, whatever you want to call that. And it's very easy to set up. You just slide it into the corners and it's good to go. And it's just got a cable coming out of the back that goes to the power supply, which I'll show you in a second. And this version is the color temperature changing one. The advantage to this is that if you need a light that first of all can fit in a tiny, super slim space, let's say your talent needs to be in a place where you have no space for lighting, then potentially this can go there where a lot of other lights just cannot go. Because this is so thin and so lightweight and has Velcro, you can connect this anywhere without a stand. So the stand is usually the thing that takes up the most room. For me, the other really important use for this is that if you need to put a light above a person, I just would never put a heavy light high up above actors or anything like that. And the cable going from the light to the power box is just under 6 foot, which means that you can have this quite low next to the ground and this quite high up. And I think that's a safer option than having a big heavy light up top. I would happily let someone roll this up and hit me over the head with it. I mean, it's fabric. Obviously, without the metal thing. And also because it's quite large, it's giving quite a soft light. And here just is a really quick example of the sort of result you can get with this. And here is the control box with this sort of a touchscreen thing. Now this kind of light is special in that it can create a very soft light for not much carrying weight and not much size. So let's do a comparison. It's not a fair comparison, but it will give you an idea of why you might want to get this one or why you might not want to get this one. So the Pixar Pro is about twice the price of this if we're including the softbox. And this is about 1/10 the price of this. Now the brightnesses off the top of my head are about 1,400 lux, about 3,000 lux, and about 1,000 lux. How is that possible? The Pixar Pro light gives us something around 13 or 14,000 lux, which is a lot of brightness. But because I want this huge, amazing softbox, then that reduces the brightness. And I'm not sure exactly what is the fair way to count the brightness after going through a softbox, but I'm going to assume that the fair way is to count it 1 meter from the fabric, not 1 meter from the light itself. So at 1 meter away from the front of the fabric, it's around 1,000 lux. We're further away from the light. That distance makes a big difference in the brightness. And because we're going through 2 layers of fabric. So actually there's a big reduction. Now this is not because it's a bad softbox. Actually, it's an amazing softbox. This is the most evenly lit softbox that I have ever used. And that means that this gives me results that I love. Now the Pixar Pro has the power unit built into the light itself. So that with the softbox, something like 4 kilograms total. And then this with the power supply is around 2 kilograms. And this is around 450 grams plus a battery. So my point of this very unfair comparison of 3 completely different lighting units is that this does have a place. This gives you an option that allows you to have almost 3 times the brightness for half the carrying weight and half the price of something like this. And obviously this does give me much better results than this, just because it's a much better softbox. It doesn't have little points of light. But if the ultimate softness is not your goal and you just want something that's pretty decent, then this has a lot of potential. I'm not sure if you want to say that's about half the size or about 1/3 the size, but it's smaller for sure. And if you pair it up with a couple of these that will be your backlights, since these do an amazing job of that, then potentially you're going to have a lightweight kit that is very good. The Mark II Plus version and this can both work on V-mount batteries, but with this light you're going to get better power efficiency if we're comparing this with the softbox and this as it is, because with this energy is wasted on being diffused by the softbox. Now I'm going to give you guys the same advice that I give to everyone who asks whether you should get a color changing light. In my opinion, no. Get a light that has daylight white balance. That will just give you the most brightness for your money, and just in my opinion, my experience, it's just not needed to have that color changing thing, because in almost every light that I know of, the daylight white balanced one is twice as bright. However, if you need to mix your lights with lights of other colors, then yes, that can be useful. So for example, if you're filming somewhere and the ambient lighting is very warm, then yes, then color changing can be good. Although personally, I would just take a big gel. I would rather have twice the power most of the time, and for those rare occasions where I might need to change the color of my lights, I would use a gel on them. You can get a big Lee Filters gel or Roscoe. I think they're about £5 for a gel this size. So for me, that just makes much more sense. And another good reason to go for the daylight color version of this plus some gels is that you can get some really, really nice color gels for some really nice backgrounds or some really nice hairlights. In this example here, I want to light something up with a very large light from the bottom, and fitting a large light at the bottom here is not always easy, because this would fit, but you know, it's a very small light. So this here is just a random little example I set up with a top light as well, sort of a top and back light, but mostly being lit from the bottom. And I made the glass wet on both sides to give it this sort of frosted look. And these do not get very hot. So around 30 Celsius, the rest of the room is around 20 Celsius. LEDs with a little bit of space between them, so you're going to get multiple shadows, but in my opinion, not very noticeable. Here at 5500 Kelvin, which means that the tungsten ones are on, but just a tiny bit. 2800 lux at 1 meter. I took a raw photo at 5500 Kelvin. Here I'm using Photoshop Camera Raw. There is no tint towards either green or magenta. It's a tiny bit colder than what I set it to, so I set it to 5500 Kelvin, and the actual light output was 4850. That can be adjusted because this is a color adjustable light. Just something to keep in mind that if you select 5500 Kelvin on this, it might not necessarily be 5500 Kelvin. It might be a bit off. I guess for a lower budget light, I wouldn't expect it to be calibrated, but it would be good if it was. So what I would say is dial it into exactly what you need based on the image in the camera, not based on the numbers on the screen here. And I like that this has a little cable that comes out of it, which just makes it easier to hang it up just on, you know, something like that. But keep in mind that that's not the most secure way to hang this. So definitely I would never put this high up with something like this. So my conclusion for this is that this thing is fantastic for its intended use, and as a general use light, it is also very, very good. If weight wasn't an issue, then of course I would choose something like that instead. I would like to see a smaller power box for this, and this does come with a carry bag, really, really basic, not padded. Now, even though this thing is not fragile, I still think it would be better if this thing was padded, because the power supply is still a big piece of metal. So here the weight is just over 2 kilograms. The weight of the panel and the mount that holds it is 800 grams, which is pretty good. And then here, just the panel rolled up is 430 grams. Now I'm sure you guys want to see a foot test, so here we go. Well, my foot is fine and the light is fine, so I would say that's a pass. Now I did have one problem with this light, and that is that the connector that goes between the main light and the power supply has a connection problem. The connector that they've decided to use here has no protection to prevent this from spinning. Right now, what I'm doing inside there when I'm turning this cable is this. It's turning those cables. And there is also an issue with this color changing version, which is that when you go from 5600 Kelvin to the next one down, so 5550, there is an actual big jump in color, and the lower you are in brightness, the bigger that jump is. So here at maximum brightness, you can see that that's sort of how big the jump is. It's not too bad, and actually it's fairly usable, and you can see there me going through the entire range. But then we have the same thing once again on the other side between 3050 and 3100, and for some reason 3000 doesn't do anything. The lower you go, the worse it is. When you go down to 1%, and 1% is an actual setting that you might use sometimes. Here, for example, maybe I wanted a subject to be very close to the light to get a really, really soft light, and this is at ISO 100, so this 1% brightness is potentially something you might use, but this has no color changing, or well, it has 3 settings. We have both on, or this one on, or this one on. In between, nothing happens until you reach the end. And it's also very noticeable at like 15%, 30%. So here, even at something like 40%, we can see a very big jump, let's say from 5600 Kelvin to one below. You can see that. And I would say above 40% is probably still usable, because you do have, you know, quite a big range still of colors to choose from, but once again on the other side, there is a big jump. And a random little tip for you guys, since this kind of lighting effect is actually something that can look really beautiful, then you can create something like this for a few dollars just by using some fairy lights from the local dollar store from eBay. And that's something I've actually made a video about. I made a big ring light out of a bunch of fairy lights, and you can create something like this with them, and pretty much anything else you want. It won't be as good as this in many ways, but in some ways it could be better because it's going to be cheap, it's going to be really lightweight, I mean basically nothing. But obviously it's not going to look professional, it's not going to match up to daylight very well, and it may have other color issues, and it won't go as bright as something like this. Actually, it won't have a dimmer at all, and you know, so it's really not perfect. But hey, if you're on a budget, then you can create some really beautiful looks. It can actually do the trick. So I don't have a definite conclusion for this one. There are some things I like about this and some things that could really be improved. I think the daylight color one would be better. I'm going to try and get that one in and review that. If you want to get notifications when I post a video, then you can turn on the little bell icon below this video. So thanks for watching, guys. As usual, you can ask me questions in the comments, and I'll have links down below to this and the daylight color one of this. And of course, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!